You begin in silence. Not the kind that shouts with emptiness, but the dense, hushed quiet of early morning in a marble palace so old. The walls themselves seem to sigh when you lean on them. The air tastes of cool minerals and a hint of damp linen because even emperors have laundry. Though there smells faintly of lavender and diplomatic immunity. Sun. Nearby. Water drips in rhythmic taps against a terracotta bowl. It's not a dramatic palace, not the kind you'd see in a movie poster with armies and fire. No. This one prefers solitude. Its grand corridors are stuffed with silence, and a few modestly surprised spiders. You walk across chilled tiles, your footsteps soft, like you're tiptoeing through the quiet thoughts of a long-forgotten dynasty. This is the palace of Emperor Xianzong of Thames, the year 817 CE. The place, Chang'an, capital of an empire, so vast and poetically bureaucratic. It could take 2 months to get a response to a dinner invitation. Still, for all its size, the real drama of the day is something much smaller. Snowflakes. You see Xianzong collects them, not in paintings, not in poems, not in wistful sighs, but literally, flake by flake, in jars, clay ones, lined with sheep's wool and tucked deep into an ice cellar beneath the western wing of the palace. Pug. Because why rule an empire when you can hoard frozen water in artisanal pots? Historians still debate whether he did this out of curiosity, ritual, or sheer boredom. One scroll suggests he believed snow carried the essence of celestial purity. Another implies he just liked the quiet of winter and needed an excuse to avoid his ministers' coup. To be fair, could talk for 6 hours without blinking. As you pass a lattice screen, warm light pours in through patterned shadows. You hear birds outside, arguing about breadcrumbs. The empire may stretch from jungle to desert, but here, in this sleepy corner of court life, it's just you, the emperor, Anne, and a small ceramic jar currently cradling about 6 hours of snowfall. You watch a servant walk slowly, reverently, toward the storage cellar with yet another specimen. She's wrapped in wool, her breath visible. You don't know her name, but her gait says this is the 14th jar today, and my fingers are about to unionize. There's no ceremony to it. Just the slow, practiced ritual of collecting flakes with a lacquered spoon, as if scooping stars from the edge of night. Behind her, the emperor watches, slouched slightly, robe heavy with embroidery. His face has that serene, almost too serene look of a man who's deeply invested in distraction. And really, who could blame him? The empire's been tense. Rebellions in the south. Taxation drama. Eunuchs who wield more power than most generals. You'd want a quiet hobby too. Scent. You get the sense that snowflakes don't argue back, don't send petitions, don't demand land reforms. Weird cultural tidbit. In this period of Temp's China, some nobles flavored their wine with pine resin and pearls. Not for the taste, oh no, but for health. In that time-honored tradition of drinking jewelry and pretending it's wellness. 2. Now, you won't make it through this day. Not because of danger or drama, but because it is profoundly, almost heroically, uneventful. The kind of day that doesn't bother to rise beyond a whisper. Perfect for sleep. If you're enjoying this gentle descent into snow emperors and quiet palace corners, consider liking and subscribing to our sleepy little channel. And leave a comment below with your location and the local time. We like to imagine listeners all across time zones, drifting off together. Now let's ease into tonight's journey. You step into the Emperor's archive room. Past scrolls tied in faded silk contain records of snow dates, textures, flake shapes. One simply reads, "Drifted like lost paper." Another, "Melts slower when caught on bamboo." You raise an eyebrow. Tuck. Or you would if you weren't too relaxed to move anything above the neck. Outside, the snow continues to fall. Soft, indifferent, like it's been doing this forever. By mid-morning, though, time is irrelevant when every hour feels like a soft pillow gently placed on your brain. The Emperor is back in his study. If you can call it that. It's really more of a scroll cave with tea. A servant pours chrysanthemum tea with slow, deliberate grace, as though every drop could rewrite the mandate of heaven. You sit nearby on a bench that creaks in polite protest. A tray of preserved plums stares at you. They're sour, possibly judgmental. You ignore them. A minister begins reading reports. Something about grain taxes. Something about a fire in Luoyang. Something about a poetry scandal. Yes, that's a real thing. Apparently, a minor courtier plagiarized a metaphor about moonlight. And now there's chaos in the literary bureau. The Emperor nods solemnly. He hasn't looked up from his jar of snow. God. Do you think it remembers the sky it came from? He asks, mostly to himself. The minister pauses. Unsure if this is a riddle, a metaphor, or just another snow-induced philosophical drift, coughs diplomatically and returns to the grain problem. Remember that servant from earlier? She's now seated just outside, wrapping her hands in felt. Her nose is red. Her expression blank in the way only government employees can master. Her job is technically seasonal precipitation technician, although unofficially she's known as Jar Girl behind the storage hall. Culturally, the Thames dynasty excelled in bureaucracy. There were officials for salt, tea, horses, even eyebrow styles. No archivist. Isn't that outlandish? Really? Tang. And here's your historical fact. The Tang dynasty maintained the Kyoan Zabo, one of the world's earliest government gazettes. Like a newsletter, but with more bamboo paper and fewer jokes. It was handwritten and distributed by runners, essentially the 9th century version of an inbox you can unsubscribe from. The Emperor finally speaks. Preserve today's flakes as elegant, not brisk. Yesterday's were brisk. Today, the scribe doesn't even flinch. He just dips his brush and writes it down, word for word. Under snow observations. Imperial record, year 12 of Yuan. You notice that one of the jars has cracked slightly. Too much temperature variation. The snow inside is slushing now, turning into a modest puddle of imperial disappointment. The servant sighs, and someone's already writing a memo about it. Somewhere, in this quiet, snow-obsessed room, you realize something odd. You feel safe, not just from wars or taxes or poetry feuds, but from expectation. There's nothing to do here, nothing to win. Just snow, silence, and the slow, rhythmic scratch of a calligraphy brush on silk-bound parchment. Weird cultural tidbit. Temps. Nobles used to breed crickets for their songs and carry them around in tiny golden cages, like organic iPods with very limited battery life. B. The emperor leans back, his robe pooling like a melted lantern. I heard a rumor, he says lazily, that the snow in the northern steppes tastes like iron. No one asks how he would know that, or if snow has Honestly, it's probably for the best. Historians still debate whether Emperor Tess' obsession was a form of subtle resistance against the growing power of palace units, an indirect way to reclaim control over at least something. Or maybe, as one scholar put it, he just really, really liked weather. You breathe in. The air smells like ink and cedarwood. Sun. Somewhere nearby, a bell chimes low and long lunch for the lower court. Sea. For you, it's just another excuse to stay seated, weightless, warm, wrapped in the softness of bureaucratic snowfall. Jars. Wait, patiently. Lunch is served in hushed dignity, as if even the rice is aware that this is a palace, not a marketplace noodle stall. You watch as bowls are placed one by one on an elmwood table lacquered so perfectly it reflects the face of a man trying very hard not to fall asleep in his soup. Steamed duck, fermented bean curd, and something suspiciously gelatinous that might be fishmore, the last known member of a rare aquatic species. Hard to say. The emperor does not eat much. Just a few bites, distracted. Biss. His mind is, unsurprisingly, still on snow. He gestures toward the courtyard, where flakes fall with the apathy of seasoned bureaucrats. Collect from the east side today, he murmurs. It falls slower there. More poetic. Courtier nods, pretending this is perfectly normal. You feel for him. Somewhere deep inside, he probably once dreamed of becoming a general or a philosopher. Now he's head of snow logistics. Career plans are slippery like that. Remember the servant? Tezer girl. You now learn her name is Leah. She's wrapping today's batch in silk, muttering under her breath. Possibly composing a poem about sore shoulders and existential cold. There's a rhythm to it all. Dance. That repeats, soft and slow. Leon collects. The emperor notes. The scribe records. It's as if the empire itself has paused just for this one delicate absurdity, historical fact. The Temps court actually employed official weather watchers called Qishangguan. They'd report on strange atmospheric events like red lightning or triple rainbows, which were often interpreted as omens. Snowfall. Snowfall was usually seen as auspicious. Or, at worst, a chance to stay indoors and avoid politics. You stand beneath a pavilion, snow curling through the lattice. Someone brings ginger tea. You sip, your hands warming around the porcelain cup. Kraus, the courtyard, a musician tunes a not to play, just to tune be. 'Cause apparently, it's a good day for being almost productive. Weird cultural tidbit. Some temps. Nobles used heated tortoise shells to warm their feet in winter. Blasé. Yes, but also slow. One scholar noted that by the time the shell got warm, your toes had committed treason and left the empire. The emperor, eyes half-lidded, watches the flakes fall with the same intensity that most people reserve for dynastic collapse. Couge. Each one dies alone, he whispers, dramatically. You stifle a chuckle, not out of disrespect, but because it's all so poetic and pointless, and somehow profoundly beautiful. Historians still debate whether the emperor's fascination was spiritual, symbolic, or an early case of seasonal affective disorder. One scroll hints he had recurring dreams of drowning in snow, only to wake and send 4 more jars. You start to feel it too, that sense that time isn't linear, it's spiral. The day doesn't move forward, it deepens. Like a yawn you never finish, like a snowflake that falls, melts, and becomes a memory. You close your eyes for a moment, lulled by the soft scrape of snow gathered into bowls. Gukin now plays a single note, drawn out like a thread. Snow, and still the snow falls. Afternoon arrives like a sleepy cat, quiet, reluctant, and clearly not planning to do anything productive. The sky turns a shade paler, as if it, too, has decided to take a nap. Inside the palace, the pace slows even further. If that's possible. Even the wind seems to tiptoe past the windows. You find yourself in the hall of soft records. No, not music jest reports deemed too gentle, too ceremonial, or too obviously made up to go into the real archives. Cut. Where they file things like visions seen by goosekeeper and dreams dreamt by minister of fragrance. Leanne arrives, snow jar in hand. See. This one's labeled sparse but hopeful. A palace maid jots it down and places the jar beside yesterday's, dense, with quiet regret. You wonder if these jars are being emotionally profiled. In the back of the room, the emperor walks slowly among the jars. He pauses now and then, as if he can tell the difference between one flake and the next. This one fell like it was trying not to be noticed, he says, squinting into the wool. Outside. Children's laughter drifts faintly through the palace walls. Noble sons. At study. Tossing snowballs when tutors aren't looking. The snow doesn't care. It falls the same whether you're a prince or a jar girl. Probably the most democratic thing in the empire. Historical fact. Chang'an. was one of the largest and most cosmopolitan cities in the world during the Tang Dynasty. 2. Persians, Arabs, Indians, Koreans, all trading silk, spices, and occasionally bad poetry. At its height, the city had nearly 2 million residents and more public bathhouses than you can count on to a bake. Back inside, Leon stares wistfully at the courtyard. She's thinking of Homa village north of the capital, where snow fell heavier but less ceremonially, where her mother used to boil sweet rice cakes in winter, and nobody ever asked her to classify precipitation by mood. You hear the bell of the 6th hour. A eunuch appears, announcing the time in a voice so practiced it could lull a dragon to sleep. Weird cultural tidbit: some temp scholars believed that snow carried messages from heaven coded in flake shape. One eccentric monk even tried to read them by melting flakes on dark silk and interpreting the blotches. He was eventually promoted, not fired. Promoted. The emperor reclines on a bamboo couch, the sound of wind rustling the silk curtains. I wonder, he murmurs, if snow falls faster in other worlds. No one answers. You're not sure if you should. But in this half-dream state, with snow outside and warm tea inside, you begin to feel like maybe, just maybe, Covey. This is exactly how an empire should spend its winter afternoon. Historians still debate whether these snow jars were ever opened again. Some records suggest they were sealed and buried. Others claim they were used in rituals long forgotten. One even says they were sold, centuries later, as emperor's soup base. Hopefully not the last one. You lean back, the cushion soft beneath you. The jar closest to your hand is warm on the outside, cold within, like memory, like sleep. Snow, ever patient, continues to fall. Evening dozen tea descends so much as it drapes itself slowly over the palace like a silk robe too delicate to wrinkle. The light in the sky turns to the color of old parchment, faded, warm, and unsure of what it meant to say. Tamma. You follow the emperor into the winter listening chamber, which sounds more interesting than it is. Spoiler: there's no listening involved. Just more snow talk. The room is round, echoless, lined with cedarwood slats that smell like expensive restraint. Carrion scents curls through the air, a blend of sandalwood and cloves, trailing from a bronze crane-shaped censer. You can't help but yawn. The smoke seems to yawn back. A jar rests on the emperor's lap. This one's lid is slightly ajar, as if it, too, has grown tired of being closed off. Xianzong peers inside like he's expecting it to whisper secrets. Some flakes melt quickly, he says to no one in particular, as if they're ashamed of being seen. You nod solemnly. It seems like the right thing to do. A page boy approaches with a Scrultonite snow report. Yes, there is such a thing. Scar. Snow began at the hour of the monkey. It reads, soft start. Minimal breeze. Accumulation noted on rooftops and egos. There's a pause. I added that last part. The boy admits. I thought it needed character. The emperor hums. Perhaps amused. perhaps deciding if sarcasm is treason. You watch as he folds the scroll and places it gently beside the jar, as if both contain equally fragile truths. Historical fact. The Thames dynasty marked time using the 12 earthly branches, tread, each named after animals, monkey, rooster, dog, and so on. Timekeeping was poetic, pook, which, in a world of snow jars and incensed decisions, makes complete sense. Outside, palace lamps flicker to life. Their glow spills across the courtyard like spilled honey. You hear a distant song, probably a kitchen maid humming while washing rice. It's off-key, but so honest it nearly breaks your heart. Leanne walks past with another jar. This one's labeled snow that seemed to change its mind. She catches your gaze for a moment and shrugs. Her fingers are pink and cracked. You suspect. She stopped believing in the jars 2 winters ago, but habit is a powerful emperor of its own. Weird cultural tidbit. Some tongue nobles would scatter snow on lacquered black trays and use them as mood mirrors, watching the flurries melt as a way to reflect on mortality. Others just thought it looked cool, calmer. The emperor now leans against a pillar, robes pooled like sleep at his feet. I wonder, he murmurs, if in 1,000 years someone will still care how snow felt on this day. You do? A little? Kagoo. Even if just because he asked his. Historians still debate whether these winter rituals were sincere or performative, a theater of stillness in a time of unrest. Spahn suggests the snow jars were never meant to last. They were simply a way to mark time, not preserve it. A gentle gong sounds. Not for a meeting. Not for war. Just the hour of the rooster. Another slow exhale from the day. Another reason to stay still. And the snow. It keeps falling, tirelessly, tenderly, like it's reading you to sleep, one flake at a time. Night. In the palace is not dark. It's silvery. Like someone wrapped the world in moonlight and silk, and left just enough glow to see your way to a midnight snack. You walk through the south cloister, where every third lantern flickers slightly off rhythm, like even the palace itself has a lazy heartbeat. The air is colder now, sharper. Your breath comes out in delicate clouds that dissolve before they can finish their sentence. "Hey, fox," cries faintly from the forest beyond the outer walls. You wonder if it dreams of snow too. You find yourself back at the Imperial Ice Cellar. Not a glamorous place. Just a sunken stone chamber lined with packed straw, clay, shelves, and the musky memory of 17 winters. Leon is already inside, adjusting a crooked lid. Jar 17 fell over, she says, yawning. We're calling it sudden despair. You stifle a laugh, and she smiles for the first time today. Snow jars line the walls, in uneven rows. Some are marked in calligraphy, so elegant it makes your spine ache. Others are scribbled in haste, as if someone sneezed mid-label. One has a drawing of a duck on it. No explanation. For historical fact. Chinese emperors during the Tong's dynasty often built ice houses to preserve winter's chill for use in the summer. These underground cellars were packed with ice, cut from lakes, insulated with straw and earth. Some even had rotating stock like the first refrigerated inventory system, except you couldn't get popsicles. You brush your hand along the shelf. A jar titled Snow that whispered sits beside another labeled simply yes. It S. Hard to tell if that S profound or if someone was just running out of brush ink. Leon adds a new jar to the lineup. Snow today was unambitious, she says. Didn't really try. You nod. Relatable. Weird. Cultural tidbit. P. Some Temps court members believed eating the first snowfall of winter brought wisdom. One minister reportedly consumed an entire bowl of it, then tried to explain taxes using bird metaphors. He was not invited back. You hear slow footsteps above. The emperor. He's pacing the upper garden, his silhouette gliding through lantern light like a ghost with opinions. You wonder if he ever laughs. If he remembers why he started this collection. Or if, like so many of us, he just kept doing the strange thing long after it made sense. Historians still debate whether the jars were sealed with intention or simply forgotten, buried under palace renovations and dynasties. One account claims a jar was unearthed during the Song era still intact. It was ceremoniously sniffed and declared somewhat nostalgic, mostly damp. Leon leans back against a pillar and lets her eyes close. I used to think the snow mattered, she whispers. Now I just like how quiet it makes people. You sit beside her. Say nothing. The air is thick with sleep and frost and centuries. Above you, the snow falls unconcerned. Below, the jars dream quietly in their shelves. Kunga. And somewhere in the night, the emperor smiles at a flake that lands on his palm and doesn't melt right away. The wind picks up just a little, brushing past the towers and roof tiles like a lazy historian turning over pages at docent tea. Quite care to read. You walk or half-wake, really in a courtyard where the snow has blanketed everything in quiet. Even the stone lions seem humbled by it, wearing little white hats of indifference. You trail behind the emperor on his morning walk, a ritual as slow and meandering as a philosophical disagreement between turtles. Noose attendants. Keep pace, but say nothing, careful not to disturb the profound silence. Kind of quiet that feels staged, like a theater production of Peace, featuring snow. B. He pauses by a juniper tree and gestures upward. A flake lands on his palm. This one, he says, feels like a sigh. Scribe, never far behind, dutifully writes it down. Snow resembles a sigh, possibly metaphor, possibly weather report. You follow as the emperor wanders toward the pavilion of frosted thoughts, a dramatic name for what is essentially a gazebo, but it has cushions. and more importantly, kitschy, where the kitchen sends morning congee with pickled radish and an egg boiled exactly to the consistency of mild regret. Historical fact. During the Tang dynasty, the imperial court strictly regulated the breakfast offerings of nobles. You could be fined for frivolous early feasting porridge. Fine. Roasted boar with 5 sauces. Arrestable offense before noon. The emperor sips tea, staring off into nothing. If I die, he says softly, make sure they don't just dump the jars. The eunuch bows low. Coo. Of course, Your Majesty. They'll be entombed with you, per decree number 41 to see. Not with me, he says, frowning. They'll melt. Just somewhere cool. There is a beat of silence, somewhere between respectful pause and bureaucratic panic. Weird cultural tidbit, Tang had a minor holiday known as the Silent Ninth, a day during late winter where citizens were encouraged not to speak, allegedly to honor ancestral whispers. Most people used it as an excuse to avoid their You lean against a pillar carved with cranes and clouds. You wonder how much of all this the snow, the jars, the silences that speak louder than court edicts will be remembered. Come. If anyone will ever read about a man who ruled millions and still found time to label snow politely cold, historians still debate whether Emperor Xianzong's snow fascination influenced any actual policy. One document suggests snow-shaped jade tokens were briefly used to denote favor at court. Another claims he delayed a southern military campaign to wait for better snow mood. Neither account is confirmed. Both are beautiful. The emperor sighs. The tea cools. The snow falls still. Still, Kia. And you do, too. You wake again, or maybe you never fully slept. Time has become a polite illusion. Snow has stopped for now, but not really. Scott. She's paused, like a storyteller catching their breath between chapters. In the palace library, the candles are low and the scrolls are many. Some are rolled tight like secrets. Others are splayed open mid-thought, like someone wandered off mid-sentence and never came back. A breeze moves through the high windows. You wonder if it's looking for something. The emperor sits with a court astronomer. They speak in tones reserved for oracles and toddlers. Did the snow align with Jupiter's crossing? Kia asks. The astronomer, who has not slept in days, nods vaguely. Definitely, spiritually, if not cosmologically. Good, the emperor says, satisfied. Historical fact. Temp's astronomers were some of the most advanced of their age. They charted solar eclipses, tracked comets, and could predict planetary conjunctions with startling accuracy. Whether or not they used those skills to confirm snow-themed spiritual phenomena remains questionable. A new jar sits beside the emperor's hand. It's unlabeled. He looks at it thoughtfully. Some days, he says, the snow refuses to be known. You nod. Not because you agree, just because it's that kind of day. Weird cultural tidbit. Certain Temps nobles believed that whispering into a snowflake before it touched the ground would carry the message directly to the ancestors. This led to a brief but intense fad of ancestral murmuring, which, predictably, made public parks very awkward. Leanne appears at the doorway. No jar, no brush, no wool. She just stands there, framed by a world gone white. I dreamed the snow had names, she says, Cold Icha. And they called each other when the wind blew. You believe her. Dreams feel plausible here. In fact, everything else feels a bit suspect. Historians still debate whether Shanzong's snow jars were ever meant for preservation or simply performance. Perhaps they were the emperor's way of making sense of an empire too vast to hold. Pahlavi. Or maybe, as one modern historian dryly noted, the man just hated meetings. The emperor stands. He walks slowly to a window and opens it. Snowflakes drift in just. A few landing on scrolls, on inkstones, on royal robes. None are caught, none are jarred. Just this once. He smiles. These are not for keeping. The candles gutter low. The sky darkens. Close your eyes again. The snow is still falling somewhere. Even if you're not watching. Even if no one is. The night drapes itself heavier now. Like a cloak worn backwards, soft on the inside, strange around the edges. You're no longer sure if it's late or early, kind of hour when stars look like they're eavesdropping, and the moon has clearly clocked out early. You're in the West Corridor now, a long hallway known as the Gallery of Cold Things. The name is not poetic. It is, frankly, accurate. Here's where they store the imperial ice trays. Unused ceremonial snow brushes and a jade spoon once designed exclusively for tasting sleet. Key. And yes, the snow jars are here too. Dozens, maybe hundreds. Some cracked, some weeping gently through imperfect seals. Q. Each labeled in brush strokes delicate enough to make your spine flinch with respect. D. The emperor wanders in, barefoot, robes trailing, a man of empire. Sure, but right now, more of a ghost attending his own snowball reunion. He crouches near one jar, whispers something into the lid. You don't ask what. See, you suspect it's either a secret or a weather complaint. I used to think I could stop time, he says softly, if I just caught enough of it in clay. You sit down. Not to agree. Just to be near the thought. Historical fact. During the Thames era, timekeeping was performed by water clocks, ingenious bronze basins that dripped at carefully measured rate. They marked the passing of hours with floating pegs or bells. One imperial clock was rumored to whisper softly as it drained. Though that might have just been the court poet getting carried away again. Leanne enters. Not with a jar this time, but with a hot brick wrapped in felt. She slides it beneath the emperor's feet without a word. He doesn't thank her, but his shoulders ease by half an inch. That's practically applause in this palace. Weird cultural tidbit. Tang Dynasty foot warmers sometimes contained tea leaves for scent, which seems luxurious until you realize someone later tried to brew from them. The record simply says, unwise. A breeze wanders in through a cracked window. The kind of wind that doesn't bring snow, it just checks in, sees how things are going, and leaves again, like a mildly invested relative. The emperor glances toward the shelves. What if we've preserved nothing, too? He asks, eyes distant. Just the idea that we tried. You almost reply. But the thought doesn't require an answer. Historians still debate whether Xianzong's final years were consumed by melancholy or simply detail. His edicts became increasingly specific. He once banned red lacquer on snow collection implements because it clashed spiritually. That one is verified. Pale tolls faint, uncertain. Not sure if it is signaling the next hour or just ringing out of habit. You feel your own breath slow. Every sound becomes less. Jars sit. And still, the jars sit. Silent. Full of old weather and unresolved hope. You rest your head against the cool wall and listen. Not for words, just for the hush. Somewhere in the darkness, a rooster forgets what time it is and calls too early. You don't blame it, Even the animals are confused in a place where minutes drip like honey and the air always smells of yesterday's snowfall. You're in the quiet garden now. The only part of the palace not pruned into submission, care. Here, the trees lean naturally. The moss thrives with passive ambition, and a single stone bench dares to be uneven. You sit there because you, too, are feeling uneven. The emperor arrives not long after, trailed only by his own shadow. He doesn't see you, or pretends not to. Either way, you're in the same stillness now. He kneels by a pine tree, dusted in silver, reaches out, lets a flake land on the tip of his finger. No name, he says. Just cold. It's a beautiful kind of resignation, historical fact. The Temps Emperor's gardens were designed not only for beauty, but for philosophical strolling. Each bend in the path was meant to mimic the curves of a question. Some ministers got lost in there for hours, returning with complex feelings and, reportedly, mild sunburn. The wind brushes against your ears. Not enough to chill. Just enough to remind you you're still here. Weird cultural tidbit. In the deeper countryside, some Thames villagers used to believe that snow was skyleaf ash, fallen remnants from celestial trees being pruned by mountain gods. Children were told not to step on fresh snow, so as not to offend the tree spirits. Neat in the city, people mostly just worried about slipping. The emperor turns suddenly. I wanted to write a poem, he says, but all I had was weather. You nod. The sentence sounds like a farewell, but he's not going anywhere. Historians still debate whether any of the emperor's snow notes were meant to be poetry. Some argue the jar labels were his quietest verses. Others insist he composed real poems but never released them. Out of fear they'd melt before the ink dried. Leon arrives, her breath rising in lazy spirals. See. She sits at the edge of the garden, just far enough to pretend she's not part of this moment. You know what I miss, she says, not really to you. Rain. It comes down like it has something to say. No one answers. Terrific. Which, ironically, is the perfect reply. You close your eyes. Snow settles softly on your shoulder. You let it do. You do not brush it away, and for a while you listen. Not to words, not to wind, Buddha, but to something colder and older and perfectly still. Dawn arrives without ceremony. No blaze of gold, no trumpet of color, strew, just a slow fading of the dark, like someone gently turned up the wick on the day. Sky is a soft, translucent gray, as if even the sun is hesitant to interrupt. You're walking through the southern cloisters, now long corridors built for thinking, or for pretending to think while avoiding early meetings. Stone underfoot is warm from buried steam vents, a quiet luxury that feels like the palace whispering under your feet. Go back to bed. The Empire can wait. The Empire can wait. Grr. In one alcove, a stone dragon wears a new dusting of snow. Someone, possibly Leon, has placed a flower in its mouth. You approve. The dragon looks surprised but serene, like it just tasted something sweet and philosophical. You find the Emperor in the moon reflection room. Again, a name that oversells. No moons. Just a circular window that frames the sky like an ink painting you forgot to sign. He sits on a low bench, jar in hand. This one has no label, just a crack running down the side, patched with wax. He tilts it slightly, listening. Snow can echo. I dreamed they turned the jars into bells, he says, without looking up. Rang them to wake the stars. Historical fact. In the Tums dynasty, dreams held court-level importance. Emperors routinely summoned interpreters to decode their night wanderings. A dream of falling snow was generally seen as an omen of clarity or, if the snow was dirty, impending corruption, which seems uncomfortably specific. The Emperor finally notices you. He pats the bench beside him. You sit, dude. Do you think? He says. Snow ever remembers being cloud. You consider this. 10 nod. There's no wrong answer to a question like that. Weird cultural tidbit. During the Thames era, there was a brief, earnest fashion trend involving hats made to resemble gently falling snow. They were made of white silk, shaped like domes, and padded with goose down. Court poets wore them to readings. Court dogs were deeply unimpressed. Outside the window, snow falls again. Light, apologetic, the kind of snow that feels like a second thought. Pooh, you both watch it. No words needed. Leon enters with tea. She doesn't ask if you want any. She just pours. This is what trust looks like now. Warm liquid, a chipped cup, and no explanation. Historians still debate whether the emperor's fixation was ritual or coping. Some argue he feared being remembered only as a ruler and not as a man who once loved quiet of falling things. The jar in his hand begins to weep. A soft trickle down the side, warm clay meeting cold melt. Let it go, he whispers. And he does. He sets it down, lets the melt run freely across the stone. It doesn't ruin anything. You sip your tea. You breathe in steam. The snow continues to fall, one flake at a time, like punctuation from a story, no longer trying to impress anyone. Later, though, who can say exactly when you find yourself in the Hall of Almost Memories? This one's real. A long, drafty room filled with shelves of odd items no one can quite categorize. Unlabeled scrolls, unfinished statues, clay tokens that probably meant something once. It smells like old wood, dust, and the kind of ink that knew secrets. Leon is here. Seated at a low table, sorting through a stack of empty snow jars. They've been cleaned, tabula rasa. If clay could sigh. Starting over. You ask. Shrugs. No. Just clearing space. One of the jars still holds a single flake. Somehow it clings to the bottom like a stubborn story. She stares at it a long time. The emperor arrives. Alone this time. His robe today is simple, his hair loose. He looks less like a ruler and more like someone trying to remember a name on the tip of his tongue. Did we keep too many? Thing, he asks, running a finger along a shelf. Maybe, Leanne says, key. But we didn't keep enough of the right ones. He nods. Accepts this without argument. Historical fact. The Temps court maintained detailed inventories of imperial objects. Every item, from robes to rocks, was documented. But the snow jars, they appear in only 2 known records. One is a poem, the other is a complaint about storage space. You wander to the window. Snow is tapering off now. The courtyard shows patches of stone again, like a face waking from a dream. Weird cultural tidbit. Tang fortune tellers occasionally used snow patterns to predict marriage luck. If snow accumulated in spirals on your rooftop, it was said your next lover would speak in poetry and borrow your shoes. If it melted quickly, best wait another year. Leon hands you a fresh jar. Not cold, not yet filled. Just clay, and silence, and possibility. Hold it for a while, she says, P.O. before it becomes anything you do. It's heavier than you expect. Like it's already waiting to be full of something. The emperor gazes out across the palace grounds. Pete. I remember. He murmurs. A snow that fell so quietly, even the birds forgot how to fly. Not this time. Historians still debate what became of Leon. She vanishes from records after the emperor's death. One scroll mentions a woman of jars who left the palace with a cart full of clay and never looked back. Another claims she became a tea master in the south, where it never snowed. You look at the empty jar in your hands, and you wait. And the snow, from somewhere far away now, keeps falling. There's a stillness in the air now. Not the tense kind, not the kind before a storm or a verdict, but the deep, soft hush of something finishing itself. The palace feels thinner somehow. Bees, as if it's shedding weight it no longer needs. You walk the inner corridor, where the red doors are always half open, and the shadows sit politely in the corners, waiting for the day to finish. You reach the quiet pavilion, not to be confused with the listening chamber, the frosted hall, or the place where that minister once cried during a sunrise. Krint. Inside, there's only one jar left on the pedestal. It's sealed tightly. The emperor stands before it, looking undecided, as though he's just realized he might not want to know what's inside. Or maybe he's already forgotten what he put there. Do you think snow changes once no one watches it? Asks. Leon, seated by the doorway, rests her chin on her hand. Everything does. Historical fact. In 819 CE, a year after today's setting, Emperor Xianzong would die suddenly, and under what the records diplomatically call unclear circumstances. Some say poison, some say illness, some say heartbreak, although even the most generous historians admit that's more poetic than plausible. Still, on this night, none of that has happened yet. There is only a jar, and the man who sealed it, and the woman who's watched him do it 100 times. Weird cultural tidbit. There was once a Temps court edict limiting how many metaphorical statements could be made in a single day. It lasted exactly 4 days before being rescinded due to widespread panic in the poetry department. You sit on the floor, the stone warm from the lingering heat of the day. A candle flickers beside you. The shadows on the wall stretch long and slow, like dancers bowing out of a performance no one realized had ended. The emperor sighs. Maybe this one isn't snow at all. He steps away, leaves the jar unopened. Lion stands and joins him. You all walk out into the courtyard. No one speaks. Above you, a single snowflake drifts down. Just one. It lands on the emperor's shoulder. He doesn't brush it away. Later, long after the moon has made peace with the rooftops and the wind has stopped caring what time it is, you find yourself in the hall of empty sounds. It's not an actual hall. Not anymore. Just a broken arcade by the outer garden where no one goes unless they've run out of things to pretend to do. Perfect, then, for tonight. Leon sits beside you, back against a pillar with ivy creeping up its base. You share the last of a teapot someone forgot to collect. The tea is cold, but strangely sweet. I never told anyone, she says, but I broke the first jar. The very first. He didn't notice. I just made a new one and labeled it Serene. You laugh. The sound surprises you both. Historical fact. The Tang Palace had entire departments devoted to silence. One team ensured ceremonial quiet during royal processions, using felted shoes, padded door hinges, and strict punishment for sneezes. Their leader was titled the Director of Tranquility. A stressful job, ironically. The emperor appears at the far end of the ruined hall. See. He walks slowly, as if unsure whether he's arrived or is only passing through. His eyes are brighter tonight, or perhaps just reflecting more stars. Bea. I think, he says, we've jarred enough. No one disagrees. Weird cultural tidbit. See. In certain remote regions of Temps China, people used to gather fresh snow into ceramic cups, pour honeyed wine over it, and offer it to traveling monks. A gesture of hospitality and weather-based hospitality. Some monks claimed it let them dream of different lives. The emperor sits. Not in a throne, just on a step, beside you and Lien. His robe brushes against the dust, and he doesn't seem to mind. There's no record for tonight, he says. Let it be undocumented. Goo. You all nod. Not lazily, but as if giving permission to time itself. Historians still debate the contents of the final jar. One theory suggests it was empty all along, a statement about him. Another says it held the first snowflake of a new year, captured on a whim. A final theory insists it contained a folded poem, never read, never shared. The stars above blink slowly. See, a shooting star drags itself across the sky like a punctuation mark written by a tired hand. You lean your head back. Stone is cold now, but you don't move. The emperor closes his eyes. Leon breathes in deeply, like someone tasting the end of a long sentence. And snow begins again. The sky is pale again. Not the pale of morning, exactly, but that quiet in-between hue, where night is still stretching and day hasn't noticed. You're back in the courtyard. Same courtyard, but changed. There are footprints now. Fewer jars. More air. Everything feels looser. You find the emperor seated beneath the old ginkgo tree. Dumb. One its limbs is melting slowly, drop by drop, like time, undoing itself in small, courteous gestures. He holds no jar, no brush, no scroll, just his own hands. I dreamed of summer, he says. It felt blasphemous. You smile, not because it's funny, but because the idea of warmth feels foreign and fascinating now, like a country you once knew and forgot the language of. Lien joins you both, hair loose, robe plain. She doesn't bow. No one does. Not this morning. You remember the jar labeled *rectant? She asks. The emperor nods. It melted through the bottom. Of course it did, she says, grinning. Historical fact. Snow rarely lasted more than a few hours in southern China. The jars preserved not just flakes, but exaggerations, little memorials to how cold felt, not how it actually was. Some jars contained more silk than snow. You all sit in silence for a long time. Not the heavy kind, the kind that lets you breathe. Weird cultural tidbit. Their S1 Temps folktale about a man who tried to sell snow by weight in summer. He stored it in clay pots, just like these, and set up shop with great fanfare. When asked what he was selling, he simply said, "Proof that nothing stays." The emperor, after a long while, rises. He doesn't speak. He doesn't look back. He just walks into the corridor, into the palace, into whatever comes next. Leon watches him go. "I think that's it," she says. "I think he's finally let the snow melt." Historians still debate what happened to the jars. Some claim they were smashed in a ceremonial gesture of closure. Others say they were buried beneath the palace, but there's one record and verified, but quietly beloved that says Leon took them, one by one, and placed them beneath trees across the city, so the snow could rejoin the earth without fanfare. You look around. No new flakes fall. No old ones linger. It's just weather now. You close your eyes. You feel it. Not the cold. Just the hush. Just the end of a very long, very soft, very quiet thought. Wind down. The final fade, and now the snow slows. Close. Even in memory, the jars are closed. The emperor sleeps. The brush rests beside the inkstone, and no one asks it for meaning. You walk through the palace one last time, feet soft on worn stone, air thick with the gentle dust of forgotten incense. Rooms that once held weather now hold only space. You pass the pavilion of frosted thoughts, empty. You glance into the moon reflection room, candle burned out. Every hallway breathes out a sigh it didn't know it was holding. Ginkgo leaves tremble in the morning air. And somewhere far off, a bell rings not to wake you, just to remind the world it's still turning. Leon's voice echoes, faintly, maybe real, maybe not. Everything melts. And that's all right. You lie down beneath the sky, now colorless, soft, like linen, just out of sunlight, and your breath slows, longer and softer out, like the snow that never rushed to fall, like the jar that never needed to be opened. You drift between yesterday and never again. And the last sound is silence. A silence that holds you. A silence that keeps you warm. Sleep now. The snow has stopped.